What are they injecting into the stratosphere with aerosol?
Highly toxic nanoparticles, aluminum, barium, strontium, manganese polymer fibers, surfactants, and
now Nicole Shanahan, I don't know if you're aware of this. She a bit of a bombshell. She was RFK's running mate. She was his vice presidential running mate when he was running as an independent. And she says the EPA says its plans to release information on geoengineering, which is what we just talked about. They didn't release any of the nothing. So we went and I looked at it. It's all garbage. It's all stuff made you to think nothing's going on. It's just like, oh, look, there's nothing to the Jeffrey Epstein files. Oh, look, there's nothing there. Oh, look, the COVID virus came from a wet lab, a wet market. There's nothing to it. We didn't invent it. So here's what she said. Here's what she said.
Hey, everybody. So EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin announced today that his agency will finally release detailed information on geoengineering. If you followed me for a while, you know this is something I care deeply about. So this feels like the right moment to share. I have been speaking with a whistleblower over the past several weeks who has helped me really understand what's happening in our skies. They have given me information that could shed real light on these programs, who's behind them, where the funding's coming from, and what we can do to stop them. I'll be posting an article on my...
So here is that article. She posted, it's called The Dark Maha. That's kind of funny. Geoengineering, who's behind it and how we stop it. So here's a little bit from her article. It's a long article, a lot of info. She said, I've been in contact with a government whistleblower, an individual who has held high-level security clearances and has spent over a decade consulting directly with major federal agencies. Their experience spans the Department of Defense, the Department of Energy, NOAA, and the intelligence community. They told me that despite President Trump's 2020 directive to halt taxpayer-funded climate change initiatives, federal grants for solar radiation management, called SRM, and stratospheric aerosol injection, SAI, and other geoengineering technologies are still being issued. The programs haven't stopped. They've just been rebranded.
Does it sound familiar? Like gain of function?
Sounds
Obama said stop gain of function, but they just did a lot of gain of function.
Yeah. So yeah, I remember in 2014, Obama puts a halt to the gain of function research that Fauci was funding, and Fauci just then went through a CIA cutout called Echo Health Alliance and funded it through there. So this sounds very similar, right? So again, you don't live in a democracy, you live in an oligarchy, and they're going to do what they want because voting isn't going to stop this. Geoengineering is now commonly called climate intervention. SRM is now referred to as solar radiation modification. SAI is now stratospheric aerosol intervention. These semantic shifts aren't scientific. They're strategic. They're designed to obfuscate the truth and shield these programs from Freedom of Information Act or FOIA requests, media scrutiny, and public opposition. So do you concur with that, Dane? Do you see this semantic sleight of hand happening?
I do. Stratospheric aerosol intervention is actually stratospheric aerosol injection. That is the correct term. But yes, that is common for them to do something like this. But the scope and scale of this is above almost anything else. Goes back to the central bankers. These programs have been ongoing for 80 years. We have Senate documents, government documents to back that up.
Well, a question. I thought that it was like 1928 or something is when they started doing like the fog, testing fog by affecting the weather.
Yes.
Okay. Am I not doing the math right? But it's like 1928, I thought.
But that's not this.
Oh, okay. I see what you mean.
Solar radiation management, those are defense purposes. The screen curtain, those go back further, even patents before 1920. But SRM operations appear to have first been fully deployed over the polar regions immediately after World War II. So right about 80 years. And again, ramped up since then. And Jimmy, Kurt, you guys have seen every picture we've seen of the polar regions since we were kids. There's always this featureless sky, right?
Mm.
I mean, we just take for granted that that's what the polar regions look like.
Yeah.
No, that's how long they've been hampering the system. That's SRM. It's been going on that long. And we know they were beta testing during World War II because we found military footage of the B-17 bombers flying in formation that everybody assumes that's just a giant condensation trail. We found footage of them filming an aircraft above them, all information, shutting that trail off like it's been cut with a knife. Did that plane fall out of the sky? Did his engines turn off? No, they were beta testing. So again, we don't know what was what in World War II. They were certainly testing. They certainly deployed after World War II.
So when they say stratospheric aerosol intervention, you say it's injection. What are they injecting into the stratosphere with aerosol?
Highly toxic nanoparticles, aluminum, barium, strontium, manganese polymer fibers, surfactants. And as far as the term, and this is where semantics has come into this equation, we know that because we sued one of the most prominent climate scientists on this issue who's trying to hide it, Dr. Douglas McMartin, works for MIT, Carnegie, Caltech, because he was trying to play the game of semantics saying, well, this isn't happening in the stratosphere, therefore it can't be geoengineering. And again, game of semantics. So the bottom line is the stratosphere over the polar regions, it is happening there because the stratosphere is lower. It can be as low as 23,000 feet. Here, where we're at mid-latitudes, it's being done in the troposphere. So their game of semantics was, our definition of geoengineering is stratospheric. This is tropospheric. Therefore, it can't be geoengineering. It's ludicrous. This whole thing is ludicrous. Again, they're spraying us like lab rats, Jimmy.
Yes, and we'll get
never
to,
stopped.
We'll
never stopped doing it.
Never stop.
And we'll get to the effects of what those nanoparticles have on your body. One of them being Alzheimer's.
Yes.
The whistleblower provided me with federal grant data showing millions of taxpayer dollars flowing to universities under these new labels. One organization stood out, the University Corporation for Atmospheric Research, or UCAR. What a great name for environmental awareness organization. UCAR? Just think how big brains are in these think tanks. Don't think. This nonprofit consortium of 130 colleges and universities manages the National Center for Atmospheric Research on behalf of the National Science Foundation. So just like how Fauci was able to control the research at all the colleges because he held the purse strings, and he was able to control all the scientists at colleges and universities that do the most important work. It seems like they're doing the same thing with this. 130 colleges and universities managed by, so UCAR has received more than $230 million in direct federal awards, yet much of the documentation about their work is inaccessible without an internal login. Even so, their public-facing pages and scientific papers reveal clear participation in stratospheric aerosol assessments and other geoengineering research. Here, I just want to show you a video she included in her article. This is a guy who's been advocating that we do this kind of science in the stratosphere, the troposphere, and do the injecting of nanoparticles into our atmosphere. And he was on with Stephen Colbert back when Stephen Colbert didn't suck and he was good. Watch this. Watch this.
You could actually spray sulfuric acid in the stratosphere 20 kilometers over our head and use that to stop the planet warming up in a ugly tech fix.
You could spray something into the atmosphere to change. Okay.
Spray pollution into the atmosphere to.
So this is a guy named David Keith. He's the geoengineer and owner of carbonengineering.com, and he wrote this book, and that's why he was on Stephen Colbert. He's been on lots of shows. This is just one of them. And he just says it right out loud. We're going to spray sulfuric acid into the atmosphere. And this kind of blows Stephen Colbert's mind back when he was able to have his mind blown by crazy stuff like this.
He's never brought it up again.
And he's never brought it up again, no.
It's working.
How do you do this?
You'd start with a fleet of modified business jets and say 20,000 tons of sulfuric acid into the stratosphere every year. And each year you have to put a little more. And this doesn't, in the long run, mean that you can forget about cutting emissions. We will need to rein in emissions.
We'll get to it eventually. But in the meantime, we're shrouding the earth in sulfuric acid.
So people are terrified about talking about this because they're scared that it will prevent us cutting emissions.
Right, and also that it's sulfuric. sulfuric acid?
We put 50 million tons of sulfuric acid in the air now as pollution, and it kills 1 million people a year worldwide.
Okay, but it'll be better if we put more in.
We're talking about 1% of that.
1% more,
cowbell.
we're just killing 10,000 more people.
You can do math.
What happens to the sulfuric acid after it's sprayed? Does it just stay up there?
No, it rains down,
Okay.
but it's a tiny addition to what we're already doing.
Is there any possible way this could come back to bite us in the end?
It actually turns out to be an old idea. This was
Really?
known since President Johnson.
You ever look at those planes up there? They have contrails behind them. Maybe all those planes with the contrails, maybe they're actually spraying chemicals into the atmosphere right now, and Uncle Sam isn't telling us.
Seems extremely unlikely. The
That
fact
the
is
United
government-
States is not telling something to its citizens? That seems extremely likely to me. Read the newspaper.
Boy, whatever happened to that Stephen Colbert, huh, Kurt? That was
He
amazing.
got sprayed with chemicals from a modified business plan.
I think he did get. So there he is admitting that that's what they're doing, and he's trying to make it like it's not a big deal.
It's just the plot of Highlander 2. I know nobody saw it because it sucked, but the plot of Highlander 2 was that they blotted out the sun by mistake doing that. I cannot believe that plot is first Top Gun in Iran and now Highlander 2.
There's an important additional bit of information regarding what you just showed, Jimmy, and that's Dr. David Keith, the world's most recognized geoengineer. At an international geoengineering conference, I cornered Dr. Keith. I was one of only 3 questions they allowed from about 100 reporters and researchers, and he gave a 3.5-hour symposium of putting tens of millions of tons of not sulfuric acid, but aluminum, nanoparticle aluminum. They've completely changed their narrative because they realize now the population understands aluminum is toxic to all life forms, period. So now he's changed the entire narrative, and that confrontation is on film on the record in our documentary, The Dimming, 26 million views on YouTube and counting. So Dr. Keith, after a 3.5-hour symposium of pushing for tens of millions of tons of aluminum nanoparticles to be dumped in the atmosphere. My question to Dr. Keith was this: have you done any toxicological studies whatsoever, human or environmental? His answer, after looking like a deer in the headlights, no, we haven't. Could terrible things happen tomorrow? We don't know. From a scientist, really? And now they've changed the entire narrative.
I'll bet they have studied and they don't care. It's not. Yeah.
Well,
they want to say
here-
they want it.
Well, here is back to Nicole Shanahan's article. She says a 2020 review in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease found that chronic aluminum exposure correlates with Alzheimer's type dementia, pointing out risks of atmospheric dispersants leaching into the human body. Other peer-reviewed research has associated aerosol pollution with rising asthma rates, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, that's COPD, and even endocrine disruption. Yes, these risks go largely unaddressed. The EPA has not conducted any long-term toxicological studies or atmospheric dispersants used in climate intervention. Neither have state health departments, because if you acknowledge the risk, you must also accept liability. So they haven't done, just like you said when you confronted that guy, and that's why they're doing this semantic sleight of hand where they're not saying it's aluminum anymore, because people know that aluminum causes Alzheimer's. And so that's why they switched it. And I wish I had that video to show right now. That would be amazing. But let me just go show you one last slide from Nicole Shanahan's article. She said, so they had these hearings about this, about geoengineering in Congress. And you talked about the treaty they had to stop everybody doing this geoengineering. It was all about military. This is all about applications militarily. And so Senator Clinton Anderson of New Mexico recalled a chilling warning from Dr. John Van Neumann, a member of the Atomic Energy Commission and a pioneer in modern computing. According to Anderson, Van Neumann had warned that, quote, weather manipulation, not the ICBM, meaning missiles, would be the ultimate weapon for the protection of the free world. Other expert witnesses echoed the concern. Dr. Irving Langmuir, a Nobel Prize-winning chemist and early cloud seeding researcher, was quoted as saying that the real long-term threat wasn't from missiles, but from weather control. In his own words, one could control the march of armies and everything using weather modification. Wow. So this is really started as it's a military operation. This is like how DARPA had their hands in the COVID virus. This is very much similar, correct?
It is. In regard to aluminum, the inhaled aluminum nanoparticles are far more detrimental than ingested particles. We have the world's top experts on aluminum toxicity, Dr. Exley, stating without aluminum in the equation, there would be no Alzheimer's in the normal human lifespan of 100 years. And Jimmy and Kurt, the bees are collapsing. You heard that, right, Jimmy?
Yes.
So we saw this year the biggest collapse of all, 70%. That sounds bad. It is bad. But what's the real picture? That was a 70% collapse of the 20% that remained. We're down to single digits on the pollinators. We know what Einstein said: once we lose the pollinators, we're not going to be here long. And I'll end with this. We have peer-reviewed science study. If your followers search bees aluminum, peer-reviewed science study proving that bees are dying of symptoms that resemble Alzheimer's and dementia in a human being from massive aluminum exposure. This is 1,000 miles away from industry or anything else. It's clearly coming from the sky. And they can't even find their way back to the hive. How long till we can't find our way back to our home if we keep sucking this stuff up with every breath we take?
So you say there's a connection between this kind of geoengineering and the collapse of the bee population?
Oh, it's completely connected. Absolutely. We have lab tests to back that up. We've done about 500 lab tests working with UC Minnesota. That's a large ag group. There's so much aluminum in our rain, it's completely toxic. So much aluminum, it's changing soil pH values. And again, bioavailable aluminum does not exist naturally in the environment. It's always bonded to other elements unless it's been mined, refined, and dispersed. It's exactly what Dr. David Keith was initially pushing before he realized that wasn't going to fly. And it's listed in climate engineering patents. Again, this is absolutely one of the elements that's being dispersed, and we're breathing it in. Every person we've tested, Jimmy, hair, blood, urine is packed with aluminum now.
And so, why are they doing it? What is it, the interest? Like what? So
Jimmy, you know how I keep bringing up over and over how everyone can't remember anything for more than a month or a week now?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I wonder if it has anything to do with the aluminum in the rain.
Yeah, but people, Bill Gates has to breathe the same air that I have to breathe, right? So, Jeff Bezos has to breathe the same air. The Klaus Schwab has to breathe the same air. So wouldn't those people who are responsible for doing this and have been responsible for doing it for 80 years, wouldn't they be afraid of this? What do you say to this, Dane?
First, let me back up to the stated purpose of these operations. The covert label, solar radiation management, light scattering particles in the atmosphere, slow down some of the sun's incoming thermal energy with no consideration of the consequences. We know it's being used as a covert weapon of war. Yes, crown jewel weapon of military-industrial complex. And we know the entire system has been designed, the official air quality system, not to show this mountain of contamination. All official air quality testing is PM10, only occasionally PM2.5. These particles are inconceivably smaller. Again, you can fit 100,000 nanoparticles across the width of a single human hair. So with the current air testing system, Jimmy and Kurt, it would be like trying to catch a minnow in a tuna net. It doesn't show up at all. And in regard to the consequences for the controllers, those who print the money, that's ultimately who's behind all of this. Elected officials are simply puppets in the play. What else have they done to themselves already? Are we dealing with sanity? Answer is no. So we have 2,400 nuclear bombs detonated all over the world. That contaminated everything. You guys might remember these terms: Project Starfish Prime and Project Fishbowl. That's the detonation of hydrogen bombs in the magnetosphere that they thought could collapse the entire atmosphere. Did that stop them? No. So again, we know from psychoanalysis, and this is right from the manual, there's a common thread with those in power, and it's this. It's like a headless, heartless, soulless cancer. But the exact quote from the manual is that they have a near total lack of comprehension as to the consequences of their actions, even to themselves.
You can see it. You can see it. I mean, look, all the other stuff we cover every day on the show is so disconnected from any form of human empathy or understanding. Like, they can't get their head around the evil they're doing right now.
Hey, come see us on tour. We're going to be in Toronto, Red Bank, New Jersey, Northampton, Massachusetts, Concord, New Hampshire, Oxnard, California, Rutherford, New Jersey, New York, Edmonton, Calgary, and Vancouver. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.